lived in a little 20-foot trailer on the campus. I was going under the GI Bill, and at that time, I think they were paying veterans $90 a month. They were paying my tuition, they were buying my books. It was not a lot of money, but I can recall very vividly that our grocery bill ran from $5 to $7 a week. We didn't have what we wanted, but we had plenty of what we needed to survive on. And we lived off that $90 a month, paid all of our medical expenses, food, clothing. And I believe that the rent on the trailer, if I recall, was either $10 or $20 a month, which wasn't much. Then some 17 months after the marriage, James came along. So during the last 6 weeks of Mary's pregnancy, she went back to Laurel, Mississippi. She lived with her mother and dad so that her mother could care for her. And then after James came, she stayed another 6 weeks. And then I went and got her, and we went back to Livingston and moved back into the trailer. It was not an easy road at that time. My income was increased because of James to $120 a month, which was the maximum that a veteran could draw with a family and one child. And it wasn't long after that, well, about a year, that the Korean War broke out. And I had said when I was discharged from the service that I would never join anything else, not even the Salvation Army. But as I stated earlier, the going was kind of tough on a meager income. And I told Mary I thought I'd join the Army again. So I went to Meridian, Mississippi, tried to join the Air Force, but they wouldn't take me because I had one dependent. So I gave up on that, went back to school. And in December of 1950, we were out for school break, the holiday. I went to Mobile. Lindsay was then living in Mobile, visit with him. And Mary, I don't recall if she stayed with her mother, she and James, or if she was at Dad and Mom's. But anyway, I went out to Brooklyn to see if they maybe had any openings there. There was one opening that I found. They wanted a male, they wanted a veteran, and they wanted someone who could type. I applied for the job, left, went back to Lindsay's. Already they had called Lindsay's house wanting me to return the call because they had an interest, because I did qualify for the job. That was after Christmas, sometime around the 28th of December. They asked me to report on 2nd of January of '51, take the typing examination. I went out, I took the typing examination, I passed it. I went on their payroll that date, and I remained on the U.S. government payroll until 16th of October 1976, at which time I was officially retired. After retiring out of St. Louis, Missouri, Mary and I decided we wanted to return to Mobile, where James and Jerry and their wife, Jerry and his wife, not James, he was a bachelor, determined he would never be married, but sooner or later, you know what happens there, the bug catches up with him, it did, many years down the pipe. And Phil and Debbie had been to Mobile, but they had decided that they wanted to come back to Missouri. So the week of my retirement, Phil and Debbie came back to Missouri. And it was a difficult thing to do, to leave one in St. Louis and coming home to two in Mobile. But we had already made our plans, and we decided to move on into Mobile. So we hooked the car to the U-Haul. We left St. Louis on a Saturday morning, sometime late in the afternoon or early evening on that Saturday, the 19th day of September. We arrived in Jackson, Mississippi. Stopped over at Jackie's and Tom, going to spend the night, and then come on into Mobile the following morning. During that night, I developed a bleeding at the bowel. Went to the emergency room at St. Dominic's Hospital, put me in the hospital, careful examination and test for a period of 1 week. Could not determine what the problem was, stopped bleeding. They released me and told me I could go home. We went back to Jackie's and Tom to spend the night before we left to come into Mobile the following day. Sometime around midnight or shortly thereafter, I developed a severe hurting in my chest. And I told Mary, I said, I need to go to the emergency room. I either have pneumonia or blood clot in my lung. Back to the emergency room, and sure enough, they confirmed that I had embolism in both lungs. Embolism is nothing more than a multitude of clots, and these clots were in both lungs. And into intensive care that I went for a period of about 2.5 to 3 weeks. Much of the time, I was not aware of where I was because this was very serious and very life-threatening. But after about 2.5 weeks, through the answer of prayer and the medications that the doctors applied, I began to come through. I recovered, was released from the hospital. We came on into Mobile where we set up a residence. The week before I left the hospital, on the 14th day of October, Maya, our first grandchild, was born. We would have given anything to have been present at our first grandchild's birth, but my sickness prevented this. So we came on in, and of course we were very thrilled to be back in Mobile, and of course especially thrilled to have that granddaughter. And of course it was like starting all over again, and that's been true with each one of them that has come on since. Somewhere back along the way, I think I made the statement many times, boy, that wouldn't happen to me. But let me tell you, don't ever make a rash statement like that, because those words you say, most times you will have to eat. And I have eaten a lot of those words that I wish that I had not said. All right, then some 1 year subsequent to that, here came that second grandchild, Heather Renee. We were present at Heather's birth. And then subsequent to that was Chaz on the 11th day of January 1979. Chaz was born. And then some 2 years subsequent to that, on the 24th day of February 1981, Philip Andrew was born. And I'll never forget, Phil was working. Mary and I, we were visiting with Phil and Deb in St. Louis, and it fell my lot to take old big fat Deb to the hospital. Oh boy, we went to the Christian Hospital Northeast, I believe it was. No, it was Northwest Hospital. And wasn't long after that until Phil arrived, and of course, I suppose an hour, maybe less. Phil came out and he announced that we had us a big boy. And that little rascal, he had a head of black hair. And again, we were real proud, and that was 4. Thought, boy, this is it, because James had stated that he was a confirmed bachelor, or if he ever decided to marry, he'd be 35 or over. Well, as the years rolled along, James got older, and Mary and I had resigned to the fact that we had a confirmed bachelor on our hands. Well, it wasn't long after that until he and Lisa met. And I knew, boy, that something had happened. James had boasted to me before, he said, Daddy, he said, I'm going to remain single. I don't think I'll ever marry. And when I retire from teaching school at 55, I'm going to buy myself a motor home. I'm going to hit the golf trail. So after he and Lisa had been dating possibly for 6 weeks, one afternoon James came over and I was here, and I knew something was on his mind. I could look at the expression on his face. And he told me, he said, Daddy, he said, Lisa and I plan to marry. He said, I've asked her to marry, and she's accepted. And I just had to bring back the fact, boy, what you were telling me a few days ago, you can forget, because your expenses are just beginning. But anyway, he and Lisa announced their wedding date, 23rd of August, and he asked if I would be the best man. And boy, that thrilled me to know him, because I really was hopeful that he would ask me, because I had wanted to be with Jerry and Phil, but they had their close buddies, and I could understand why they didn't ask an old man like me to stand by. But anyway, I'll forgive them for that, but I am glad that one out of the three at least asked me to be the best man. It was difficult. It would have been difficult for me to have been the best man for Phil and Jerry. And of course, as all of you know, I'm pretty emotional. I felt like, well, you know, let the tears fly. And that's, of course, what I did. Even though I wasn't the best man at their wedding, I knew I was giving something up, but in return, I knew that I was getting a couple of dollars. And then with James, the tears did fly, and I also gained a third daughter. I'm proud of my family. I'm proud of my boys. There's been many events along the way that I know that I'm not going to be able to bring into this conversation, in which I have been thrilled. But to my sons, let me say this. Those things that I felt are basic to rearing a family, I believe that you boys fell within the scope of those basic things that I felt to be important. Of course, you knew that I always told you there could only be one master in the house. That would be myself. I know that I wasn't always right, but I was always boss. And I know that there were many things along the way that maybe I corrected you in, that I can see now that was asinine. But at that time, I felt it important. And as a result of my doing that, it may be the result of you boys being good citizens today, good family men, with families of your own, without being behind bars someplace. So I suppose if I had it to do over, I wouldn't do it different, even though I think that I might. I considered myself sometimes to be just a little too strict, and maybe I was, but that's history. Can't go back in the past and undo that. We'll just go from here forward. Well, let me go back a ways to Mary's side of the house. I was most fortunate to get into a family, a Christian family, Mom and Pop Harry. There's no doubt in my mind of all the men that I've ever known, even including my dad, that I have never known a finer, more straightforward Christian man than Buford Harry was. So many times I have mentioned to him, Pop, you set a good example for us kids, but for some reason, none of us elected to follow that example. But I just want you to know that I love you and that you have been a second dad to me. I knew, of course, they were not my biological parents, but other than that, Mom and Pop Herring, not only to me, but to all of the in-laws, if we were gathered together in a group and someone came in that did not know who the in-laws were or the children, I can assure you that so far as Mom and Pop was concerned, they would have never known, because they just didn't show any distinction. I wish that had been true with me. But we each have different personalities, and each one has his and her own shortcomings, and I know I have mine, and I've had those to occur in my life, and I'm sure as long as I live, they'll continue to occur. Intentionally, I've never deliberately tried to hurt any of my children or their spouses, nor my grandchildren. But I know that there's been times in which I've lost my temper, and that has been one of my major problems. But as I have grown older and grown closer to the Lord, I feel that He has, through asking Him and working with it myself, that I have been able to at least have a milder temper and be able to keep my mouth shut sometimes, whereas before I said things maybe that I should not have said. But again, that's history. You can't go back and undo it. You just have to take me for face value. I think again that I have tried to live by the golden rule as near as I can. I know that we can't always please everyone. And I'll never forget what James told me once. And you can even learn from your children if you just listen. He told me, he said, Daddy, he said, if you go around trying to please everyone, he said, you will wreck your own life. I thought on that a lot, and it's true. You will. Be yourself. Do unto others as you would have them do to you, and let them think what they will. As long as you know that your actions are right in the sight of God and with your fellow man, it's not possible that you can please everyone. From this, I think possibly the three greatest events, maybe, was that when I met and married your mother. Second, when my three sons were born into our household. Thirdly, when those grandchildren came along. And then, when the boys took on wives. And now I'm having to start all over again with these grandchildren. This little knot-head, kinky-haired guy off of Leroy Stevens Road. He's won this old man's heart. He lights his household up when he comes in. The other kids, I love them equally as much, and they know I do. But they're becoming teenagers now, and they have their own way of life, and they're kind of pulling away from mom and pop. And I can understand, but this little fella's coming along, and boy, has he one out of a heart. He's got us hook, line, sinker, and all. And I'm enjoying him. I wish that I could enjoy him more, but I can't do by him like I would do for the simple reason that my physical problem won't permit it. But I'll do what I can as long as I can. I'd like to go back and backtrack a ways back to April of 1960 and tell you of some of the tragic things that happened in my life. In April 1960, Dad died of a heart attack. This was a tragic event because I'm very close to my dad. He was not an educated man through formal education, book learning, but he was a man who could read, he could comprehend, he listened to the radio, and he could understand what he heard, and he could also, as I stated earlier, comprehend what he read. He was a good politician, and it was hard for him to understand why that you had to have a specialized field for just about everything. And I had difficulty in explaining to him that things had changed over the years, because he thought just a school teacher ought to be able to take care of all of it. Because basically all he was taught was math, reading, and writing. But I told him, Dad, things have changed. This has become a more specialized world in which we're living, and you may not be able to see it, and I may not, but you're going to see more drastic changes as the years roll by. And even during his short lifespan, because he would have been 71 years old in September of that year when he died, he saw a lot of changes. He went from the horse and buggy days until the space age off. And then 6 weeks subsequent to that, my brother McKinley, he died at emphysema, died in July of 1960. And some 21 months subsequent to McKinley's death, my baby brother Eugene died. he had tumor of the brain. So you can see there in a period of about 22 months, there was 3 tragedies that occurred in the family. But again, I say we must go on living, and God will give us the strength that we need if we are relying upon Him. I know the circle will be broken here on earth, but there's no reason that it can't be joined together in heaven. And I would say to my entire household, all of you, that I may not leave any earthly inheritance, but the most important thing that I could leave to you would be a Christian heritage. And even though I've had my ups and downs, and you have seen my faults, and I'd be the first to admit that I've had a lot of them, but I have tried to rear you children in the right way. I have carried you to Sunday school and church. I have read the scripture to you. I have prayed with you and for you, and even today I pray daily for each member of my household. Those of you that don't know the Lord, I pray that you will know Him. And I may not see the circle complete here, but I hope to see it complete in heaven. Children, I would say to you boys, especially, and this even includes my grandsons, that if you have a role model to follow, and I know you grandchildren don't remember Grandpa Harry, or if you do, it's a vague remembrance. But I would say that he would be the best role model that you could follow, so far as character and a Christian man. I, of course, wouldn't care for you to have his awkward personality, because, as you know, he was quite reserved. He didn't say much, and you'd have to strain your ears to hear what he did say. But I can truthfully say that I never heard him speak an evil word. I never heard him speak aught against his fellow man. If he couldn't say something good about his fellow man, he would not say anything at all. And to you daughter-in-law and to you granddaughter, the role model that I would like for you to be able to follow would be your grandmother Harry. She likewise is a fine Christian lady and has set an outstanding example for the entire household. There's much more that I could say, but I don't know whether it would be of any advantage to you. I think from the heart I've spoken to you, and this has been probably 30 minutes all rolled into one. And now if your mom wants to take over from here, give you some of her background, her family background, she may do so. But until such time, I'll leave it as it is. There is no man ever lived who loved his family more than I